I always thought I had a solid marriage with Lisa. We've been together for almost 10 years now, and while it wasn't always perfect, it never crossed my mind that things could go so horribly wrong. We were the couple everyone else looked up to, at least that's how it seemed. We had a nice house, a couple of dogs, and a decent circle of friends, but something shifted. I felt it in the air like static electricity before a storm. It started small. Lisa began spending more evenings out with friends. When I asked her about it, she claimed they were just catching up over drinks. I wanted to trust her, but there was something off about her stories. The details seemed vague, and she was often vague about who these friends were, the kind of friends that could suddenly take precedence over our time together. My gut told me something was wrong, but I brushed it off. Then there were the little things. She changed her phone password overnight. I noticed it when I tried to check the weather on her phone one day. She'd always let me use it, so the sudden secrecy threw me off. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off. "Oh, I just wanted to update it. You know how it is," she said, rolling her eyes. I wanted to believe her, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. The final straw came one fateful evening when I got home early from work. I found Lisa's phone sitting on the kitchen counter, buzzing incessantly. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, and as I looked at the screen, I saw a message pop up from a contact named Ryan. Message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, miss you." My heart dropped. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. I felt like a man caught in a horror film, knowing the next twist was going to be ugly. I opened the messages and saw a thread filled with flirty exchanges, words that made my skin crawl. "You're the best part of my day, and last night was amazing," jumped off the screen like knives into my heart. Every word felt like a betrayal, like a punch to the gut. I was shaking. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to reconcile what I was reading with the woman I thought I knew. I was furious and completely devastated. My hands trembled as I put the phone down, trying to regain my composure before she came home. When she did arrive, I confronted her immediately. "Who the hell is Ryan?" It came out more like a growl than a question. Lisa's face went pale, and for a second I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But then she switched gears, putting on a mask of feigned innocence. "Ryan? Oh, he's just a coworker, babe. We've been working late on that project." I pressed for details, but the more she talked, the more the lies started to unravel. She was stumbling over her own words, and I could see the cracks in her facade. "So what about these messages? Last night was amazing. What's that about?" She hesitated, and I could feel the tension in the room thickening. "You're overreacting. It's just work banter, you know how it is." But this wasn't just banter. I could see it in her eyes. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I felt a cocktail of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief pulsating through me. I had trusted this woman with my life, my heart, and now it felt like I was standing on the brink of an emotional abyss. My mind reeled with thoughts of what our life had become. Was it all just a facade? I felt betrayed not just by her actions, but by everything I thought we were. I spent the night tossing and turning, caught between rage and sorrow, trying to formulate a plan. I knew I needed answers, real answers. I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. After hours of sleepless contemplation, I realized that I had to dig deeper into the situation. That's when I decided to hire a hacker. I just needed to know. And so began my journey into the digital secrets that had unraveled my life. With one call, I set the wheels in motion for what I hoped would be my path to the truth. Little did I know, that attempt for clarity would lead to something much darker. I spent the next few days in a haze. I kept replaying the confrontation in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Lisa was still acting as if everything was normal, which only added to my growing frustration. She would smile and laugh, asking me if I wanted to watch a movie or cook dinner together, and each time I agreed, I felt like I was playing a role in a twisted version of our life. My heart and mind were screaming at me to confront her further, but I didn't want to tip her off about my plan. As I researched options to find out more about her secretive life, my gut instinct screamed louder than ever. I started looking into hiring a hacker, someone who could dig deep into her digital footprint. It felt drastic, but I was losing my grip on reality. The truth was the only thing that could bring me any peace, and I was determined to uncover it. After some online searching, I came across a website that offered hacking services for various purposes. I read through testimonials. Some were sketchy, while others seemed credible. My heart raced as I imagined the possibilities of what I might discover. I reached out to a person named Dexter, who claimed to be discreet and efficient. They assured me that they could retrieve whatever I needed if I provided them with the necessary information. Once I secured Dexter's services, I felt a sense of relief mixed with anxiety. I was finally taking control of the situation, but it came with a heavy burden. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing an ethical line, yet it felt justified under the circumstances. I needed to know just how deep Lisa's betrayal went, and if it was just a physical affair or something more. Days later, I received an email from Dexter. My heart raced as I opened it. The hacker had gained access to Lisa's phone and provided me with a detailed report. My stomach dropped as I read through it. There it was, clear as day, a list of messages exchanged with Ryan along with photos and timestamps. It wasn't just flirting, it was explicit. They had met multiple times, and the intimacy of their exchanges made me feel sick. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut again, the wind knocked out of me. The reality of her betrayal swept through me like a cold wave, leaving me gasping for air. I stared at the screen, trying to process the evidence before me. It was one thing to suspect infidelity, but another to see it laid out in black and white. I knew then that I was dealing with a full-blown affair. The next step was how to confront her again. I couldn't do it half-heartedly this time. I needed to lay out the evidence. But deep down, I also wanted to make her feel the weight of her lies. I planned for a few days, rehearsing what I would say in front of her. I wanted her to understand the gravity of what she had done, to see the hurt she had caused me. When I finally decided to confront her again, I felt a mix of anger and sadness coursing through me. This time, I wouldn't be fooled by her sweet words or excuses. I remembered all the little things, the changes in behavior, the lies, the secrets, and I came prepared for battle. I waited until the weekend. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon, a perfect backdrop for the storm that was about to unfold. I sat across from her at our dining table, the atmosphere thick with tension. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Her expression shifted slightly, the confidence she usually wore slipped momentarily. "What's wrong?" she asked, faking concern. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, ready to display the evidence. "You're about to find out." As I began to read the messages aloud, her face paled. I watched as the shock morphed into panic. "Where did you get this?" she stammered, reaching for her phone, but I held it out of her grasp. "It doesn't matter how I got it. What matters is the truth." She tried to backpedal, her voice trembling. "I told you he's just a friend. We were just having some fun. It didn't mean anything." The excuses poured out of her like a broken dam. She claimed it was just a phase, that she was lonely and needed attention. Each excuse felt like a dagger. I felt the anger boiling inside of me. "A phase? You call this a phase? You're not just flirting, you're sleeping with him." I could see the realization hit her that I had no intention of backing down this time. The facade of innocence she had carefully maintained for so long was crumbling. Around her, as she stumbled through her explanations, a sense of clarity washed over me. I realized that I wasn't just angry, I was heartbroken. I had spent years building a life with her, and now it felt as though everything I believed in was collapsing. I struggled with the emotional toll of the confrontation. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply sad, all colliding within me like a chaotic storm. We ended up in a shouting match, and I felt a strange sense of liberation as I aired all my grievances. I wanted her to know how much her betrayal hurt me, how much I had loved her and trusted her. Yet, amidst the chaos, I also felt a sense of resignation. I had to face the reality that our marriage was crumbling, and I was standing in the wreckage. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the confrontation fizzled out into silence. I had laid bare the truth, and now we were left with the aftermath. I felt lost, knowing that whatever decision I made next would shape my future. I needed time to think about how to move forward, but I knew one thing for sure: this was just the beginning of a long and painful journey. After the confrontation, the silence between Lisa and me was deafening. It felt like we were two strangers living under the same roof, each lost in our own thoughts. I spent those first few days in a daze, grappling with the emotional fallout of everything that had happened. The initial shock was wearing off, and in its place, a simmering anger was brewing. I couldn't shake the images of her and Ryan together from my mind. I replayed their messages, the flirty banter, the intimate words that had once seemed harmless. It felt like I was walking around with a heavy weight on my chest, suffocating under the burden of betrayal. I began to question everything. How could I have been so blind? Was there something fundamentally wrong with me that I missed all the signs? Lisa attempted to reach out to me, but I wasn't ready to engage. She'd come into the living room, trying to initiate conversations, but I would respond with short, clipped answers, barely looking her way. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. The longer we sat in silence, the more I realized how far gone our relationship was. I also started talking to friends, those I could trust, about what was happening. They were shocked but supportive, urging me to take care of myself and think about what I really wanted. I felt grateful for their encouragement, but I also felt embarrassed. I had once been the guy who seemed to have it all together, and now I was the poster child for betrayal. Despite the support, there was a nagging voice in my head that kept telling me I should try to salvage the relationship. After all, we had invested nearly a decade together, shared memories, and built a life. But then I thought about the betrayal. Could I ever trust her again? After a week of emotional turmoil, I decided I needed to take a more concrete step towards a resolution. I couldn't keep living in limbo. I reached out to a marriage counselor, hoping that perhaps talking to a neutral third party could help us sort through our issues. When I told Lisa about my decision, she seemed surprised but relieved, almost as if she was expecting me to make that move. We scheduled our first session and I braced myself for it. In a way, I felt like I was dragging her into the lion's den. I knew she would have to confront her actions head-on, and I wondered how she would handle it. Part of me still wanted to believe that there was some small chance of redeeming our marriage, but another part screamed that I was only setting myself up for more pain. The day of our first counseling session, I felt a mix of anxiety and dread. The counselor's office was cozy, but the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken words. Lisa sat next to me, her body language tense, arms crossed defensively. I could see the apprehension in her eyes as we waited for the counselor to arrive. When the counselor, a middle-aged woman named Corinne, entered the room, she introduced herself with a warm smile. She had a calming presence and immediately put us at ease. I was hopeful that she could guide us through this mess, but I also knew that the journey wouldn't be easy. Corinne started by asking us to share our feelings. I took a deep breath and recounted the emotional turmoil I experienced after discovering Lisa's affair. I laid everything bare, sharing how I felt betrayed and heartbroken. I spoke about the sleepless nights and the doubts that plagued my mind. I wanted her to understand the depth of my pain, to appreciate the gravity of what had happened. When it was Lisa's turn, she initially struggled to express herself. I could see her grappling with guilt as she spoke. She apologized for her actions, but her remorse felt half-hearted. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said, her voice shaking. "I was just looking for excitement. I never meant to hurt you." Her words didn't sit well with me. I wanted to scream that it wasn't just excitement, it was betrayal. But I held my tongue, allowing Corinne to guide the conversation. As the session unfolded, Lisa began to share more about her feelings of neglect and loneliness. She explained that she felt trapped in our routine, losing a sense of identity, and sought validation elsewhere. I didn't buy it completely, but I could see she was at least trying to confront her actions. As we dove deeper into the discussion, I realized that we needed to address the underlying issues in our marriage. Lisa's feelings of isolation were valid, but they didn't justify her infidelity. I struggled to reconcile my anger with a desire to understand her perspective. Throughout the session, the counselor encouraged us to communicate openly and honestly, which proved challenging. By the end of the session, I felt emotionally drained. Corinne had suggested we keep coming back to work through these issues together. As we left the office, a flicker of hope sparked within me. Maybe this was the first step toward rebuilding trust. But as Lisa reached for my hand, I hesitated. I wanted to believe her apologies, but doubt still gnawed at me. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. I felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. I knew I had a long road ahead. I wasn't committed to giving up on our marriage just yet, but I also knew I had to protect myself. I couldn't overlook what Lisa had done, nor could I ignore the emotional scars that would linger. I fell asleep contemplating whether or not our relationship could be salvaged. It was a daunting realization that our love story was now tangled in betrayal, and I had to decide how to navigate the aftermath. Would I be able to forgive her? Could I ever fully trust her again? The answers eluded me, leaving me feeling more lost than ever. As the days turned into weeks, life became a roller coaster of emotions. Therapy sessions with Corinne became a weekly fixture in our lives, a mix of painful revelations and fragile hope. Each session peeled back the layers of our relationship like an onion, revealing the raw, unprocessed feelings that had been buried beneath years of routine and complacency. Initially, I was skeptical about the entire process. I thought discussing our problems with a stranger would feel contrived, but Corinne had a way of making us both open up. She didn't let us shy away from the tough topics. I discovered that Lisa had been battling her own demons, feeling unfulfilled and disconnected from the life we had built together. But I also learned that acknowledgement of her feelings did not excuse her betrayal. The two were not mutually exclusive. During one session, Lisa broke down in tears, expressing her regrets and fears about our future. "I'm scared we'll never get back what we had," she said, her voice trembling. "I miss you, but I don't even know if you can forgive me." Her vulnerability struck a chord. I felt a flicker of empathy for her struggles, but it was immediately followed by the cold reminder of her choices. "Forgiveness isn't easy, Lisa. It's a long road," I replied, my voice steady but filled with conflict. "You chose to betray my trust. It's not something I can just let go." I could see the pain on her face as the weight of my words settled in. She had to understand that there were serious consequences for her actions. In the following sessions, Corinne guided us through exercises designed to help us communicate better. We would sit face to face, attempting to express our feelings without interruptions. I found it cathartic but challenging. Some days, it felt like we were making progress, while others left me frustrated. Lisa's attempts to rebuild trust often felt like empty gestures. She would bring me coffee in bed or leave sweet notes around the house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same. I often caught myself falling into a familiar pattern of reflection. I would think about our early days together, how we fell in love, the laughter, the adventures we shared. Those memories felt like a different lifetime, a time when trust was unshakable. Yet the shadow of her betrayal loomed large over our present. Each time I tried to recall the love we once had, it felt tainted by the reality of what had transpired. I started keeping a journal, documenting my thoughts and feelings. It became a therapeutic outlet, a way to process the whirlwind of emotions I was experiencing. I wrote about my struggles with anger, sadness, and the occasional flicker of hope. It was a way to hold myself accountable, to document my journey through this unexpected and painful chapter of my life. As the weeks turned into months, one significant change took place. I noticed my anger slowly evolving into something more constructive. I was no longer focused solely on revenge or punishing Lisa for her betrayal. Instead, I began to reevaluate my own needs and desires. I wanted to understand what I truly wanted from this relationship moving forward. The turning point came during a particularly intense session with Corinne. We were discussing the boundaries we needed to establish to rebuild trust. Lisa expressed her desire to prove her commitment, and in that moment I realized that I had to take an active role in my own healing. I couldn't just play the victim. I had to decide whether I was willing to put in the effort to rebuild our marriage. "Let's set some boundaries," I suggested, feeling a newfound determination. "I need to know that you're committed to making this work. We can't just go back to how things were." Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face. I want that. I want to be better for us. I need to show you that I can be trusted. As we agreed upon some ground rules, like open communication about our feelings, checking in more frequently, and even sharing our phones with each other, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. It felt like we were standing at the edge of a precipice, peering into the unknown. We were both scared, but there was also a glimmer of hope that we could rebuild what was broken. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a mixture of apprehension and determination. Allowing myself to hope felt dangerous, but I couldn't deny the small flicker of possibility that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. It was during our next session that Lisa surprised me. She brought up the idea of taking a weekend trip together, somewhere we could reconnect without the weight of our past hanging over us. I think we need to get away from all of this, she said, her voice tentative but earnest. I want us to remember what we love about each other. I was taken aback by her suggestion. A part of me wanted to reject the idea outright, afraid that it would be too soon, too much. But then I thought about it, and the idea of creating new memories, of starting fresh, sparked something within me. Where do you have in mind? I asked, trying to sound neutral. Maybe a cabin by the lake, she proposed, her eyes lighting up. We used to go there in the summer when we were dating. The thought of that beautiful spot, nestled in the woods, felt like a lifeline. I nodded slowly, a cautious smile creeping onto my face. Okay, let's do it. As we planned the trip, I felt a rush of anticipation mixed with anxiety. It was a chance to step outside the shadows of betrayal, to reconnect in a way that felt genuine. I didn't know if it would magically fix everything, but I was willing to try. With every step we took toward that weekend, I felt the walls I had built around myself beginning to crack. Maybe this journey wasn't just about healing our marriage, it was about rediscovering who we were as individuals and as a couple. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew that I was ready to take that leap. I would face whatever came with an open heart. As we packed our bags, I felt a part of me blossoming, a part that dared to believe in second chances. But deep down, I also knew that the fragile trust we were building could shatter again. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope blooming amidst the ruins. The drive to the cabin was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Lisa and I had both agreed to leave our phones behind, aiming to disconnect from the digital chaos that had invaded our lives. It felt liberating yet terrifying at the same time. As we cruised along the winding roads through lush forests, I felt the tension slowly dissipate. With every mile, the weight of our recent history seemed to lighten, offering a glimmer of hope for a fresh start. When we finally arrived at the cabin, I was struck by the nostalgia that washed over me. It looked exactly as I remembered, quaint and cozy, surrounded by towering trees and the gentle sound of a nearby lake lapping against the shore. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of pine and firewood enveloped me, evoking memories of countless summers spent there, filled with laughter and love. We unpacked our bags and lit a fire in the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a warm glow around the room. As the sun began to set, we settled onto the couch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate. The atmosphere felt different. It was as if we had stepped outside the confines of our troubled relationship and into a space where healing was possible. I can't believe we're actually here, Lisa said, gazing around the room with a hint of wonder in her eyes. It feels like a lifetime ago. I nodded, trying to push aside the events of the past few months. Yeah, it does, but I want to make new memories here. Let's not dwell on what happened. With that, we began to talk, really talk. We reminisced about our early days, our goofy inside jokes, and the little things that made our relationship special. It was a refreshing change from the painful conversations we had been having in therapy. For the first time in a long while, I felt connected to her again. The laughter echoed in the cabin, a sweet reminder of the love that still lingered beneath the surface. We decided to take a hike the next morning, exploring the trails we had once roamed together. As we walked hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The beauty of nature surrounded us, and for a moment I felt hopeful. We talked openly about our feelings, our fears, and the work ahead of us. Lisa seemed genuinely committed to making things right, and her honesty was refreshing. However, the tranquility was short-lived. As we returned to the cabin, I began to feel the weight of my insecurities creeping back in. I wondered if it was too soon to trust her fully. I feared that one small trigger could send me spiraling back into that dark place of doubt and betrayal. That night, as we sat by the fire, I decided to bring it up. "Lisa, I need to be honest about something," I said, my heart racing. "I'm still struggling. Even here, even when everything feels perfect, those doubts still linger." She looked at me, her expression serious. "I get it. I feel them too. It's going to take time for both of us to heal." "I want to believe you," I continued, "but I just don't know how to move forward. What if I can't let go of the past?" "I can't change what I did," she replied softly, "but I can promise that I'll do everything I can to earn back your trust. I'm not the same person I was before. I want us to work." Her sincerity cut through my uncertainty, and as we talked through our feelings, I felt something shift within me. There was a sense of vulnerability. That came with opening up, but it also felt liberating. I realized that I needed to confront my fears instead of running from them. The next morning brought a change in the air. We woke up to the soft sound of rain tapping against the cabin roof, creating a cozy ambience as we shared breakfast. As we sat across from each other, I could see the determination in her eyes. She was ready to fight for us, and that sparked something in me. "Let's play a game," I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. Something silly to get our minds off everything. Lisa's smile brightened the room. "What do you have in mind?" We grabbed a deck of cards from the shelf and settled down for some old-fashioned card games. The laughter flowed freely, the competitive spirit igniting a sense of camaraderie. We played for hours, occasionally pausing to share stories or poke fun at each other's card skills. It felt like we were rediscovering the joy that had been missing from our lives. As the day wore on, I sensed a shift in our dynamic. We were no longer just a husband and wife trying to mend a broken relationship. We were two people exploring the foundations of our connection. I could see Lisa was genuinely invested in making things right, and while I still felt a nagging apprehension, I was beginning to trust her again. Later that afternoon, we decided to take a stroll along the lake shore. The clouds had cleared, revealing a stunning sunset that cast vibrant colors across the water. We walked side by side, the tension between us easing with every step. As we reached a quiet spot, I turned to her and said, "You know, I never thought we'd reach this point again, but I want to believe that we can work through this." Lisa looked at me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I want that too. I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to lose what we had." In that moment, I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We have a long way to go, but I'm willing to try if you are." We stood there for a moment, the last light of day casting a warm glow around us. I felt a flicker of hope igniting in my heart, a hope that perhaps we could rebuild our foundation, brick by brick. There were still many questions left unanswered, but for the first time in a long time, I felt that we were on the right path, willing to confront the future together. That night, we curled up on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that healing wouldn't happen overnight, but taking that first step together felt like reclaiming a part of our lives that I thought was lost forever. The journey ahead would be challenging, but in that moment I felt a sense of peace. We were trying, and that was enough. The next morning I woke up to the smell of coffee brewing and the sound of birds chirping outside the cabin. I stretched and smiled, feeling a warmth in my heart that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a new day, and I was determined to make the most of it. As I walked into the kitchen, I found Lisa standing by the counter, pouring two steaming mugs of coffee. "Good morning," she said, her eyes lighting up as I entered the room. "I hope you like it strong. I figured you'd need the caffeine after yesterday." I chuckled, accepting a cup from her. "Thanks. I think I'll need it if we're going to tackle today." We had decided to spend our final day at the cabin fully embracing the healing process. After breakfast, we sat down and made a list of things we wanted to do. We included activities that brought us joy, such as hiking, playing games, and even cooking together. but we also acknowledged that we needed to talk through some of the deeper issues we hadn't fully addressed. As we stepped outside, the crisp morning air filled my lungs, refreshing and invigorating. We decided to take a hike along the trails where we had often wandered in our earlier days together. With every step, I felt the weight of the past gradually lift. We talked freely about memories associated with each bend in the path, recalling silly moments that once seemed insignificant but were now cherished. "Do you remember that time we got lost on this trail?" Lisa laughed. "I thought we were going to have to spend the night." "Out here," I laughed, shaking my head at the memory. "Yeah, and you insisted we follow that shortcut that turned out to be a dead end." As we continued to walk, I could feel our connection strengthening. I realized that while the road ahead was still uncertain, this trip was a chance to start anew. We paused at a viewpoint overlooking the lake, and I took a moment to absorb the beauty surrounding us. "This place is magic," I said, looking at Lisa. "It's where we started, and I can't think of a better spot to begin again." She smiled softly, and I could see the glint of tears in her eyes. "I love this place. I love us. I'm so grateful we're here, even after everything." The hike gave way to a series of deep conversations, and as we meandered through the woods, we talked about our hopes and fears for the future. We discussed what we both needed from each other to heal, setting intentions for moving forward. I could see Lisa was genuinely committed to the process. No more excuses, no more half-hearted attempts. She wanted to be the partner I deserved. After a long day of hiking, we returned to the cabin, our spirits high. We decided to cook dinner together, a tradition we once enjoyed. Chopping vegetables and stirring pots felt familiar and comforting. We laughed as we worked, the kitchen filled with the aroma of garlic and herbs. It felt like we were rediscovering each other in the simplest ways. As we sat down to eat, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We raised our glasses for a toast, and I found myself reflecting on how far we had come. "To second chances," I said. "May we always choose to fight for us." "To second chances," Lisa echoed, her voice filled with emotion. After dinner, we cleared the table and settled in front of the fireplace. With the flames crackling and the soft glow illuminating the room, we talked late into the night. I opened up about my insecurities, my fears of being hurt again. Lisa listened attentively, her compassion evident as I laid bare my heart. "I know I've broken your trust and it's going to take time to rebuild," she said, her voice steady. "But I promise to do whatever it takes. I want to show you that I can be the partner you need." I looked into her eyes and saw sincerity. It was painful to admit, but I was starting to believe her. I wanted to trust her again, to believe that we could rise from the ashes of betrayal. We talked about the importance of rebuilding our foundation, emphasizing honesty and openness. As the evening wore on, we drifted into a comfortable silence, wrapped in each other's arms. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope, a genuine belief that we could emerge stronger from this ordeal. It wouldn't be easy, but together, we had the strength to face whatever lay ahead. When we finally headed to bed, I felt a calmness washing over me. The night was quiet, the only sounds being the soft rustle of leaves outside and the distant lapping of water against the shore. As I lay there, I knew that while the road to healing would be long and filled with challenges, we were ready to walk it together. In the days that followed, we returned home and life resumed its usual pace. But now it felt different. We approached each day with renewed commitment, consciously choosing to nurture our relationship. We continued therapy, focusing on our personal growth and our growth as a couple. It was hard work, but there was a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. I learned that healing isn't linear. It ebbs and flows, and sometimes there are setbacks. But I also learned that trust can be rebuilt through consistent actions and genuine effort. Lisa was showing up for me, and in turn, I was learning to let go of my fears. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that while I had been heartbroken, I had also emerged stronger. I had gained insight into myself, learned to communicate my needs, and discovered the importance of vulnerability in a relationship. I had also learned that forgiveness is a choice that I wasn't ready to make lightly. As I look back on that tumultuous time in our lives, I'm grateful for the lessons learned. I've come to understand that love is not just about the good times, It's also about weathering the storms together. And in that shared journey, there is a beauty that can emerge, forged through adversity. Our story is still unfolding, but there is a sense of hope now, a renewed sense of possibility. Life is unpredictable, and while I can't control what happens next, I know that together, we have the strength to face it. The journey continues, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see where it leads us.